Bad news on the jobs front. The battered economy shared 21,000 formal jobs in the first quarter. There was also a significant decline of 97,000 job opportunities in March, this compared to the year 2022. So many people face losing full-time employment and are forced to take on part-time work even. So for more on this, I'm now joined by Economist Duma Gqubule just to talk more about what's really happening and how it's impacting on workers. Duma, thank you so much for your time and good morning to you. This is not the news that we're hoping to hear this Wednesday morning, but it is a reality that according to Stats SA's quarterly employment report in Stats, 21,000 job losses being shed, of course, in the first 3 months of this year. This is a big number.
Yes, okay. So I think I should explain this. The quarterly employment statistics, that's one survey. It covers about 10 million people, but it excludes the informal sector, about 3 million people, and it also excludes people who work in private households, domestic workers, and also it excludes agriculture. So it's 10 million people versus 16 million in the larger one. So this is a survey of employers, whereas the other one looks at households. So we should look at both of them together. So both sets of statistics have shown a recovery from the lows of COVID in March 2020. But what this report is showing is that the recovery is losing momentum. We have not yet reached, in terms of employment, on both sets of statistics where we were at the start of the pandemic. So I think there is a dismal failure by the government to get their heads around the whole issue as to how to manage this economy and create jobs. And Tumelo, this is going back since 1994. The ANC government has failed to figure out what it takes to run an economy, the second largest economy in Africa. It has failed dismally. And this administration of the Ramaphosa administration, 21,000 jobs have been created since Cyril Ramaphosa became president. 476,000 young people have lost their jobs. There are now 11.9 million unemployed South Africans. Unemployment rate of 47% for Africans, 51% for African females. There are 7.2 million young South Africans who are jobless, 56% unemployment rate. And what more evidence do we need to show that the government's economic policies are not working?
You mentioned a point around the loss of momentum, Duma. What would you attribute it to? I mean, is it a matter of, as you've mentioned before, you know, the government not knowing how to run an economy, what makes an economy function, what skills are required right now for a sustainable, lucrative economy? I mean, what would you attribute this loss in momentum in creating jobs to?
Okay, so what's happened is that a long-standing failure to invest in infrastructure, especially electricity and water, and what we're seeing, the pictures in Diepkloof as I'm watching, is that now we have this load shedding during the first quarter. So this survey looks at the formal sector of the economy. So this gives us a window as to what's happening in the formal sector of the economy, where the companies are struggling because of this load shedding and the battered economy. And also the whole issue of rising interest rates and things like that. Yeah.
And one could also wonder, Duma, if it's even fair to still blame the COVID-19 pandemic for this. I mean, yes, we do understand the long-term effects and ramifications of, you know, COVID-19, but should we attribute it just to the pandemic?
No, COVID is not an excuse. So I did the numbers from the start of the Ramaphosa presidency to the COVID. 1 in unemployment, and the unemployment rate went from 36.3% to 39.7%. So the economy had collapsed before COVID. It was called a crisis before the crisis. And after COVID, our country has significantly underperformed against other IMF emerging and developing countries. There's about 155 developing countries. Last year, I mean, since the lockdowns ended, last year our economy grew by 2%, emerging markets grew by 4%. This year we're going to grow at 0.1%, emerging markets are going to grow at close to 4% and 5.3% in Asia. So many countries have recovered long ago from COVID. And I must mention, our response to the actual pandemic was so weak compared to other countries. That is part of the reason for the lack of momentum from this recovery. Yeah.
What do you think it would take? What do you think it would take for us to recover to, I don't know, pre-pandemic levels or beyond? Because as you mentioned, when we compare to other nations, we're still lacking far behind. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to address, of course, unemployment, especially when we even look at youth unemployment. So what would it take, do you think, for us to recover as a country?
Tumelo, since the global financial crisis, our economy has not grown in per capita terms, since 2009. So we are now no growth in 15 years. And the outlook is another 3 years of no growth. That is a frightening scenario. And I don't understand why the government doesn't admit. You see, growth and jobs are macroeconomic policy issues that you can't solve through projects. So you have to manipulate macroeconomic. So this is basically about the Reserve Bank, National Treasury. So we had a national development plan where we had 5.4% growth target until 2030 and 11 million jobs to be created. And there were other targets relating to infrastructure spending, 30% of GDP and so forth. But there is no body in government who is responsible for meeting that target. The Reserve Bank says they only care about inflation. Treasury says they only care about debt. So we need to flip that script and say, you now will have to grow the economy at 6%. We need a new mobilizing vision and plan for this economy. So the first thing is that we need to get this economy growing at 6% minimum. That is the first lever that we have to grow the economy. The second lever that we have to grow the economy, because even if we grow at 6%, it won't be enough. The second lever is to have industrial policies that change the structure of the economy to those that create employment for the people who don't have a low level of education and skills. The profile of the people they have, not the profile of the people we want to have. And secondly, the last lever that we have is public employment. We've got 3 public employment programs. One is the presidential employment stimulus. The second one is the expanded public works program. And the third one is the community works program. According to my calculation, they provide 1.8 million work opportunities a year and 900,000 full-time equivalent jobs. Now, the government is planning 2 months before election to stop the presidential employment stimulus. That is insane in the face of such a major employment crisis. So what I'm saying, let us amalgamate these 3 public employment programs. Let us make them a new quasi-public institution that is almost eventually have the capacity to provide a job guarantee for South Africans at a living wage of 6,000 rands a month. And we need to have a target to gradually increase the number of full-time jobs, that this public employment programs provide towards people. Right. Because economic growth, industrial policies will not be enough. We need to create massive public employment programs, as happened in the US during the New Deal in the 30s.
Not only create them, but also implement them. That's been one of the biggest critics, Duma, when it comes to government, right? Big on launching and announcements, but very slow on implementation. I appreciate you speaking to me, Economist Duma Gqubule. Thank you so much for your time as we reflected on the stats. It says quarterly employment stats showing here that 97,000 jobs fewer than in March, of course, of 2023 compared to that of March 2022. Quite a concern when it comes to, of course, the job and labor market.